Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Erected in 1965 and designated a National Historic Landmark in 1975, this obelisk marks ground zero, the exact location of the first atomic detonation, an event that ushered the world into the atomic age. That event happened 75 years ago and will be recognized by the lighting of the obelisk at exactly 5:29. On behalf of Brigadier General David C. Tribula and Command Sergeant Major Christopher A. Prosser, Commander and Command Sergeant Major of White Sands Missile Range, welcome to the Trinity Site 75th Anniversary Recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the invocation delivered by Installation Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Kyle Welch.
If you choose, please join me in prayer. Our gracious and loving God, we come this morning humbly reflecting over this desert ground, the historic place of testing, the very site that would usher the world into the age of nuclear technology. On this solemn occasion, we call upon your grace, your mercy, and your wisdom, that knowing the magnitude of such discovery, that we might as a people, a nation, and a world continue positive advances and discovery with nuclear technology in the areas of science, medicine, clean energy, space exploration, and other noble causes. We ask that you enable us to harness these resources for the greater good and towards the pursuit of a better and more peaceful world. Help us to know your peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding. It's in the holy name of our God and the Creator of all we pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Commander of White Sands Missile Range, Brigadier General David C. Tribula.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Metter, Command Sergeant Major Prosser, members of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and the Department of Defense, including Fort Bliss, Holloman Air Force Base, and White Sands Missile Range's 26 tenant and subordinate organizations, representatives from our national laboratories, to all our honored guests viewing this morning, welcome to the commemoration of the test that changed the world. Few events have changed the course of human history to the extent that the Trinity test did in mere nanoseconds on this day in 1945. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this beautiful early New Mexico morning, and welcome to the commemoration of the test that changed the world. White Sands Missile Range is honored to host each of you at the site of this historic event, and we welcome you to today's ceremony. It was here precisely 75 years ago at this very location when a history was made and a new era began. Today, you will have the opportunity to tread in the same steps of some of the greatest scientists in the world who gathered here in 1945. Their work definitively opened the atomic age and fundamentally changed the world. Fundamentally because the work that built upon the Trinity test impacted geopolitics, medicine, energy, defense, transportation, to name but a few. The epitome of testing the future, changing the world. It was 5:29 and 45 seconds on July 16, 1945, when the Trinity test ushered in the atomic age, or which you might refer to as the nuclear age. Although we can debate the true beginnings, whether Einstein's E equals mc squared, published in 1905, or perhaps Enrico Fermi's reactor built in 1942, regardless, we can agree that the Trinity test was an extremely vital occurrence that accelerated a dynamic new chapter in modern history. White Sands Missile Range, originally known as White Sands Proving Ground, was sanctioned by the Secretary of War in February 1945. This led to the range's establishment on July 9th, 1945, and just 7 days later came the Trinity test and what we are commemorating today. Of course, the Trinity test was not designed and executed in 7 days. It has its own backstory. Let's look at a portion of this story, starting with the Manhattan Project in 1942, a project conceived and put in place in order to design and build something that had not previously existed. Major General Leslie R. Groves and Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer were at the forefront of the project. Other facilities were in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in Hanford, although contributions to the project came from across the country. Significant was New Mexico's Site Y, the code name for the Los Alamos laboratory that was established in 1943, and its satellite operation in Sandia in Albuquerque. While Oppenheimer is among the most famous names associated with the Manhattan Project, the project included people from all walks of life. It took a diverse group of people with a variety of skill sets to take the project from conception to reality. As is still the case today, people are our greatest asset. The diverse workforce included Monty Taylor, an African-American scientist who worked as an associate chemist on the Manhattan Project from 1943 to 1945 at the University of Chicago. His research focused on analyzing the chemical properties of rare earth metals. It also includes Eleanor Ewing, a female mathematician in her 20s who worked at Los Alamos and helped run the IBM calculating team. She and her team delved into the math and science to predict the shock wave from an implosion-type device. And Papo Vida from nearby San Ildefonso Pueblo, who was drafted into the Army in 1944, stationed at Los Alamos, and served as a machinist in the Special Engineering Detachment. The list of people who contributed to this project is long, and each person has their own remarkable story. We have no way of even knowing, much less honoring, each individual person who was critical to this project's success. But that's really the point. The story of Trinity is not just one story. Trinity was the result of the fusion of the collective experiences of thousands of people who sacrificed their time and lent us their expertise to create something remarkable. And that is where this piece of land that we stand on today comes into play. There are other locations that were considered for the test, but in due course, this area would prove the ideal location with its secluded desert terrain within a close proximity to Los Alamos. An exceptional blend of lots of nothing and all the right stuff. Through innovation and the force of many wills to overcome just as many challenges, this site was carved out of the desert. Lieutenant Harold C. Bush's 12-soldier unit arrived on site in December 1944. This unit established initial security checkpoints and horse patrols. The distances around the site proved too great for the horses, so they resorted to using jeeps and trucks for transportation and repurposed the horses for playing polo. Maintenance and morale among the men working long hours under harsh conditions, along with dangerous reptiles and insects, was a challenge. Bush strove to improve the food and accommodations and to provide organized games and nightly movies. The remote location and harsh environment were not the only dangers. There were man-made ones as well. The Alamogordo bombing range was nearby, and the lead plane on a practice night raid accidentally knocked out the generator and thus doused the lights illuminated their intended targets. The follow-on planes bombed the only lights they could find, those of the Trinity Base Camp. This happened twice. Thankfully, there were no accidental bombings at the Schmidt-McDonald Ranch House, an important site for the test about 2 miles from here. The house was built in 1913 by German immigrant Francis Schmidt, and in the 1920s, the McDonald family took ownership. By 1945, the house was famously employed by scientists and workers to, among other things, assemble the plutonium core on July 13, 1945. It was the northeast bedroom that was designated for the assembly. Workbenches and tables were installed, and the windows were covered with plastic to keep dust and sand out of the critical instrumentation. Tape was used to fasten the edges of the plastic and to seal doors and cracks in the walls. Crude and cringeworthy on today's scientists, it's merely the creative means to getting the job done with what they had. The ranch house, restored in 1984, is a short ride from here. There you can view where, on July 12, 2 hemispheres of plutonium were carried in for preparation. At the house, Brigadier General Thomas Farrell, deputy to Major General Groves, was asked to sign a receipt for the plutonium. Farrell later said, and I quote, "I recall that I asked them if I was going to sign for it. Shouldn't I take it and handle it? So I took this heavy ball in my hand and I felt it growing warm. I got a sense of its hidden power. It wasn't a cold piece of metal, but it was really a piece of metal that seemed to be working inside. Then maybe for the first time, I began to believe some of the fantastic tales the scientists had told about this nuclear power." Let's jump ahead just 4 days, to 4 a.m. on 16 July. That's the time the Trinity test was scheduled to occur. But as those of us from the testing world know all too well, weather can literally rain on your test. And that's exactly what happened. 4 o'clock came and went, nothing. I can imagine with limited communications here among the numerous participants and observers, many had to be wondering whether the test would happen at all. But by 5:30, all doubts were erased. And according to Brigadier General Farrell's account, quote, "The effects could well be called unprecedented, magnificent, beautiful, stupendous, and terrifying. No man-made phenomena of such tremendous power had ever occurred before. The lighting effects bedaggered description. The whole country was lighted by a searing light with the intensity many times that of the midday sun. It was golden, purple, violet, gray, and blue. It lighted every peak, crevice, and ridge of the nearby mountain range with a clarity and beauty that cannot be described, but must be seen to be imagined. It was that beauty the great poets dream about, but describe most poorly and inadequately. 30 seconds after the explosion came first, the air blast pressing hard against people and things, to be followed almost immediately by the strong, sustained, awesome roar, which warned of doomsday and made us feel that we puny things were blasphemous to dare temper with the forces heretofore reserved to the Almighty. Words are inadequate tools for the jobs of acquainting those not present with the physical, mental, and psychological effects. It had to be witnessed to be realized. The test was successful. The technology was vividly proven. Of course, much more was discovered due to the overlapping scientific avenues the Manhattan Project led researchers down. Delving into the health risks associated with working with radioactive substances was the onset of health physics, dedicated to keeping the workforce safe. Today, nuclear medicine aids in the diagnosis and treatment of critical illnesses. Of course, nuclear energy continues to play a major role in powering many economies of the world. France, for instance, is the world's largest net exporter of electricity and derives about 75% of its production from nuclear energy. And while you may not associate space travel with the nuclear era, it has enabled dozens of truly amazing interplanetary research missions. Radioisotope power systems provide basic mission fuel and keep critical space components warm enough to function in the cold, dark reaches of space. These systems have powered some of the most successful and inspiring missions in space program history. No doubt, there are many other benefits in a diverse range of science and engineering that were born from the tentacles of this test. We will have to leave those to your own exploration. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning we have taken a quick look back at our beginning 75 years ago, and we are awed by how remarkable, indeed unique, were the times, the technologies, and the talents of that test. But we can also see how that day set the model for the tens of thousands of times dedicated professionals have since gathered in this remote desert to advance the security of our nation. People from all walks of life continue to unite and overcome all obstacles. Physicists and engineers, technicians and scientists, leaders, managers and administrators, safety experts, meteorologists, instrumentation operators and data collectors, logisticians, road guards, carpenters and machinists, medical providers, communication experts, photographers, and control center personnel, members of the military, government civilians, academia, industry, ranchers, the media, and politicians, all doing their part into the wee hours of the morning to evaluate the latest technology. Truly, testing the future and changing the world. We thank you for coming today to commemorate a pivotal point in history in honoring the individuals that were driven to make the Trinity test possible, and for your continuing contributions, testing the future, changing the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's Trinity Site 75th Anniversary recognition. For those attendees that need to leave at this time, the bus is located next to Jumbo and will depart in 10 minutes. For all others, please take time to view the displays that we have here, and transportation to the McDonald Ranch House will depart in 30 minutes. Thank you for your attendance and have a safe day.